to races right here in the Triad. This is WXII 12 Commitment 2026 Election Night coverage.
I have lived the American dream right here in North Carolina. Roy Cooper has never seen a dollar that he didn't want to tax and spend. I've never seen a tax I didn't want to cut.
While your costs go up, Michael Whatley says prices are down. I've never been in a race that this crucial for the people of North Carolina and for our country.
This is election coverage on WXII 12 News.
Good Tuesday night, everybody. What a fascinating few hours it has been. Kenny Beck alongside Christine Cruz here. It is Commitment 2026. Polls are closed. They have been closed for hours. We have some races, particularly those at the top of the ticket, that were decided hours ago. We have others that we have been watching for months that are still too close to call.
A really exciting midterm election night, has it not been?
It's been thrilling. Who says primaries are boring, especially in non-presidential years? Sam Paige coming out, about to speak, NC State Senate District 26. Let's have a listen.
USA! 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 This will be a very short speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the result, we just won. To all of our volunteers, to all of our supporters in Guilford and Rockingham County, to everybody that helped us here tonight, who helped us all along the way for the past year, I love you and I appreciate you and thank you. Tonight, we showed the opposition that you can put $10 to $12 million in a campaign account, those dark ads and all that negative stuff. But you know what? It worked against you, and we won this because of relationships with our citizens who I work for. As with Sheriff and as your next Senator, I will make sure that I never forget who I work for, and I'll be working for the people of the 26th District covering Guilford and Rockingham County. God bless you. All right. There are still votes to be counted, but we won on to November. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you.
Two votes. Christine, 2 votes.
This is like
13,077 to 13,075. 2 votes. That's 2 people. Maybe one family that said, I guess we'll vote today. Let's go. And they voted. And that's the difference.
It
2
sounds
votes.
like a high school class president race, right? They won by 2 votes. I mean, that is, but you heard Sam Paige, a very decisive, we won tonight. And you know, you talked about, John, we brought you back in the picture now to talk about these provisional ballots and everything else that's going to come into play here. But the fact that this is a huge win for him either way.
The fact that the Senate Majority Leader is in a race where it is within 2 votes this is not just news for the Triad, it's not just news for North Carolina, it's news that the rest of the country will be watching this. This has huge implications for the power dynamics in North Carolina. We always expected this to be a close race. It wasn't close in the money spent, as we heard there. The money spent was overwhelmingly on the favor of Berger, but close in the final election. And the fact that we have been watching this over the evening as Sam Paige went out to a long lead, and then Phil Berger generally chipped away at that as Guilford County precincts came in. What a dramatic night for watching of election results in North Carolina. For a midterm primary, this is about as important and as dramatic as it gets.
And Phil Berger with President Trump's endorsement.
Yeah, Phil Berger had the monetary advantage. He had the advantage of his position in office. He had his advantage just most recently where reevaluations are coming in Guilford County and said, I can do something about this as the leader of the state Senate. He had all those advantages. And yet Sam Paige is not without his own advantages as a long-standing sheriff of Rockingham. As he said there, I have built up a lot of relationships in Rockingham and in this area. And here we are with basically a neck-and-neck race. This race will continue as provisional ballots are counted. We are clearly within the realm of a recount in that sense. So we don't know the outcome of this tonight.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up because we heard Sam Paige declare victory. Obviously, he is thrilled, and you could argue no matter what happens, this is a tremendous moment for him and his campaign and his method of campaigning, a shoe leather, grassroots, kissing babies, knocking on doors kind of a campaign that he ran. But this is not over. Phil Berger has not lost. Sam Paige has not won. These are unofficial results. Many votes left to count. When might we know the winner, John?
And we will say there was certainly a contrast in the addresses of the two candidates here so far.
100%.
We heard from Senator Berger earlier, and it was a very different tone, a very humble tone, a very tone of lacking in confidence. And then we just heard Sam Paige very much kind of expressing confidence. That being said, this is a neck-and-neck race that is not over, and for no one candidate is in a position to declare victory. Yes, you'd rather be 2 points up out of this thousands of votes cast than 2 points down, but that will change, or that put another way, that is open to change as we start counting provisional ballots, as recounts will take place. How long could it take? We're likely talking several weeks.
Weeks, okay. And I'm told that Sam Paige is speaking right now, not necessarily at a podium, but with the media.
Let's go ahead and listen into what he's saying as he's fielding questions from reporters.
National attention. People have been watching across the state. Do you believe that you will hear anything from the president?
Well, you know, back on December 1st, the president called me at my house, and and
All right, well, that's disappointing. The good news is we are recording that conversation as well, so we'll have it for you just as soon as we can, but sometimes the live capabilities have different plans than we do here back behind the scenes and on television. But I believe the question was, do you think you'll be hearing from President Trump again? I understand he's very, very excited and his supporters are very excited. There is still very much a scenario where Phil Berger ends up winning, correct, John?
The president is not calling anybody tonight or in the next few days to congratulate them on a primary victory. The president, like all of us, will be following as provisional ballots are counted and assessed as a recount takes place. It is true that the president did call Sam Paige and say, I like you very much and I'd even like you to work in my administration. And then he went on, the president did, to endorse Phil Berger. The president always made it clear, I like both of these candidates a lot. I'm also endorsing Phil Berger for this. The president, like the rest of us, will be waiting until we actually see the actual outcome of this race. It is about as close to a tie as we know. One person in there votes differently, and we have an exact tie on election night.
That's incredible.
When people say every vote counts and someone says every vote doesn't really count, does it? You would just need to look at this race to say, yes, every single person who made a decision today or in recent days to go out to the polls or not to go out to the polls could well tip the balance of this race.
What a good point to make, huh?
We will never see anything like this ever again in our lives if we're still doing this 200 years from now. From what was at stake to the name recognition on both sides, both men, same position, 25 plus years, presidential endorsement, the TV, decided by 2 votes. This will never, ever replicate this. All right, let's get out to our teams in the field. We have, where are we going? We're going to Chris or Paige? We're going to Paige again. Okay, we're going to try that one more time. Fingers crossed.
I met a lot of nice people. I got a lot of thumbs up, so I knew we were doing good. But also, I think they've been watching your stations also, because they've been paying attention to what the sheriff in Rockingham County has been doing to protect and serve our citizens. And Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, do you think it made a difference being out there today? Do you think maybe people that were undecided?
Absolutely. I think I won several votes out there because people had questions and concerns. I said, don't believe everything you see on TV, because it's been about 5 months of negative ads, malicious ads, and I said, we're not going to put up with that. But I said, you ask me any question. And that's one thing about a sheriff. My phone always rings, and I'm receptive to the citizens I serve. Call me anytime. I put my phone number on the internet, so you can call me if you got a question.
Have you heard from Phil Berger yet?
No, he hadn't talked. I saw him today earlier, but just for a little bit.
Sheriff, how does it feel to be leaving your position as sheriff to go into a senator seat?
Well, I won't be leaving right away because I made a contract with the citizens back in 22. My term ends at the end of November this year, so I'll be serving as the sheriff of Rockingham County, serving proudly, and then after that I'll be transitioning as the next senator covering District 26, covering the citizens of Guilford and Rockingham County. I'll be working for them.
What do you think that transition will look like for you?
I'm going to add, I don't know how many 100,000, I'm going to add about 200,000 more bosses. I have to get another phone, I guess.
You had considered running in 2024. You decided not to. Why was this year the moment?
Well, I'd committed to run for lieutenant governor, and we did very well in the Piedmont area. So I knew that was going to, I knew that was going to translate well because we did very well in Guilford and Rockingham County and some other counties surrounding in the Piedmont. So it wasn't the time. And also I want to say one thing is no to casinos, no to video gaming and expansion, and also no to cannabis revenue.
Is there anything else that we're going to ask you that you think is important for them to know?
No, well, stay tuned. Stay tuned. We got some good things ahead.
You got lawyers ready?
We always have lawyers ready. Yes, sir. And they're going to do their job. I thank y'all, and I appreciate it. Thank y'all all for coming out. And thank all our friends and family. Let's give yourself a hand. Let's give yourself a hand. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. And, if I may say, Kevin Southern, Greg Ziegler, raise your hand so they can see you. These guys right here are going to be two of our new county commissioners also. And there's a guy named Seth Woodall, and he is we're moving toward being our next representative in the House, NC House. It's also me. So it's a great group of people that I've worked with over the years. And you know what? We're going to do some good things for Rockingham County and Guilford County. But again, I'm just honored to have this opportunity. Today we saw something in America. We had the right to come out and vote, free vote, and elect.
Triumphant Sam Paige for sure.
Oh my gosh, in a very good mood, very, very confident. We heard him there fielding questions from reporters, and we heard our own Lindsey Klein chime in with a question. She asked, do you think being out there today made a difference? And he was absolutely yes. And something that he talked about was when he was out there, he kept getting thumbs up. So he said, I knew I was doing well. And it goes back to the style of campaigning. He was out there shaking hands, high fives, thumbs up. Very, very interesting. And he has all but declared victory tonight. I mean, he said we won tonight. Obviously, that's not the case yet.
Right,
this is not decided, but 2 votes.
Unbelievable, the closest possible margin that we could see. It is worth noting we are being told that Phil Berger is going to address the media again in just a little bit. We heard from him about maybe an hour and a half ago, just before 10 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. He came out and essentially said, you won't be hearing from me until tomorrow morning. It is still too close. I have asked my people, my number crunchers, if they can extrapolate this out and give us an idea of where we stand. And this was when he was down by 1,000+ votes.
Right.
And there were still more than a dozen precincts in Guilford County still to count. And at that time, he said, I'll hear from you, or you'll hear from me tomorrow morning. I wonder if he is now feeling obligated to get back in front of cameras to counter what Sam Paige has said here, declaring victory. You would imagine that Phil Berger would say something to the effect of, these are unofficial results. It's the closest margin you could possibly imagine. We're going to count every single vote. We're going to look at provisional ballots, and we're going to see how this all shakes out. But as the old saying goes, let's maybe not measure carpet and drapes just yet. You would imagine if you are part of the Phil Berger camp, that's what you would be expecting to say.
Yeah, and if you were watching this race along with us and you've been watching it for months and perhaps wondering why has it gotten so much national attention, well, think about the dynamic here, because this is about potentially unseating someone who has legislative power and has legislative legacy. Yeah, they both have many, many years of experience. But as John Dinan was telling us, unseating Phil Berger, that's huge. That has huge implications for what comes next. Enormous incumbency advantage, plus the presidential endorsement, plus the financial fundraising, and plus the television ads. Oh, yeah. Huge advantage for Team Berger. And again, this race, well, unofficial results here tonight show what they show. It is hardly over. John told us earlier, could be weeks before we know the true certified winner. It's fun to project. It's fun to look and see who's ahead once all the precincts are counted. This is not official. It's not done yet. Exciting for us, interesting for us, many more weeks of this. One race that was or two races actually, that were at the opposite end of the competitive spectrum were the ones that were at the very top of the ticket. United States Senate, as expected, former two-term Democrat Roy Cooper cruising to victory, and right on cue, we are waiting to hear from Phil Berger, and I'm told he's getting close to a microphone. And there he is, about to approach the microphone. Now, important to note here, the first time we heard from him tonight, we spoke to John Dinan about this, and of course Kenny and I talked about it as well. He was very deflated. It almost sounded like a concession speech.
It did. He doesn't look super happy right here either.
No, but interestingly enough, he had said we wouldn't hear from him again until tomorrow morning, and now, you know, things have changed because it is a 50-50. Right now, we don't know who the winner is, even though Sam Paige is projecting himself the winner. We all know that 2 votes, so we still got provisional votes. And here he goes.
Here he goes, yeah. We still are at a situation where we don't know what the result is. We have what is, for all practical purposes, a tie. We don't know how many provisional ballots there are out there. We don't know if there are 20, 50, 100, 200. So we've got to make sure that every legal vote gets counted. And I look forward to moving through that process in the next weeks and days and weeks. We will see kind of how the outcome turns out. But we do not have a result at this time. So I'll take a couple of questions. I apologize, the lights are so bright I can't recognize anybody here, but more than happy to take a couple of questions.
Are you surprised by the results so far?
We always knew that the potential existed for this to be close. I think you could say this is close.
Are you going to request a recount or wait until the canvass?
So my understanding of the process is that we've got to have all of the provisionals determined. Then we'll see what the result is, and I may not be the one that needs to call the recount at that point. So I'm not going to say one way or the other. We're going to continue to press this until all legal votes have been counted and we know what the result is. We do not have that information at this time.
How has it been tonight, where you saw the Rockingham returns and then Guilford coming out, and just, you know, as everything changed moment to moment?
I think that's what the expectation always was, that there were challenges on the Rockingham side. We should do well in Guilford County. That's exactly how it played out.
While we're waiting for the final results, what message do you want to send to supporters tonight?
Well, I want to thank everybody that supported us, and I mean, basically the message is this is not over. It is something that we've got to make sure we get all the legal votes counted and we go through that process.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling? What's going through your head?
Quite frankly, I'm tired because I got up this morning about 5 o'clock and I've been on my feet most of the day. Haven't had much to eat, but you know, that's why we do these things. That's part of the process as well.
I wanted to ask really quick too, just having such a closely contested final ballot like this, you kind of referenced the importance. That shows how the importance of, you know, the race of this for North Carolina.
Every vote is important.
Can you kind of elaborate on how this kind of represents just how much this signifies for both Rockingham and Guilford County residents, just how closely contested it is?
I think it's important for folks to get out and vote. That's always the case. It's always a situation that it's important for folks to exercise their right to vote and their responsibility to vote. So we will continue through the process until we know what the result is. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there he is, Phil Berger. Not a concession speech. We do not have a result at this time. If we take nothing else away from what he just said, I think he wanted to make it very clear that Sam Paige declaring victory, while nice, was not necessarily legally binding. The race is not over.
That's what I took to be the message here. That is, Sam Paige came out, was very enthusiastic and said, I've just won this race. It's probably important, in fact, very important for everyone to understand that this race is still a neck-and-neck race. This race is far from over. That is the key message that I heard Phil Berger conveying, is this race is not over. That being said, we're still struck by the stark difference in the tone of the Senate Majority Leader Phil Berger coming out, and then Sam Paige, the challenger to him. Sam Paige still had just very enthusiastic. Phil Berger is absolutely correct. This race is not over, and he made that clear. At the same time, it would be difficult not to see the feelings that he is going through of someone who is at the pinnacle of influence and power in North Carolina, who is now very much on the ropes and could see at least the possibility, a very real possibility, that he might not survive. That being said, this race will now be determined, as Senator Berger said, by provisional ballots, then a series of recount possibilities. We are just getting started on this. It would be very difficult and not wise to make any predictions at all about a race that is essentially neck and neck right now.
John, how long would that process take?
There's a several-week process in that way. I mean, there has to be, first of all, a process of counting all provisional ballots. When people go to the ballot, and sometimes maybe they don't have an ID that is fully current in that way, and some people have made a vote and they say, we're giving you a provisional ballot. That is a ballot, we're giving you a chance to count it, but we won't count it until we actually kind of verify that it was properly cast. We will have to determine how many of those provisional ballots out there. Then we will actually have to verify which one are provisional ballots. That is the job of an elections board. The elections boards will make that determination in Guilford and Rockingham County in that way. And only at that point, the Senator Berger said, would a recount then begin. We have a several-week process before. So this is, it could not lack any more. For the drama is just palpable here of the race that we all identified as the most race to watch, not only in a tribe, but in North Carolina, and has come down to a neck-and-neck race. Every single person out there that had to make a decision today, do I cast a vote, and did make that decision to vote, or perhaps some people who said, I'm not sure if I am going to vote, maybe I won't vote, is realizing that they had a chance to make a difference in who wins this race.
The fact that Phil Berger could still win, could very well still win. It's a coin flip, essentially. What do you make of how he appeared just there? He said, how are you feeling, Senate Leader Berger? I'm tired. That struck me as odd, and you compare that with Sam Paige's energy, and I understand Sam Paige is thrilled at the result tonight, to have it 50-50, to have Phil Berger, as you put it, on the ropes at this point. But again, this is...
First of all, I take him at face value when he said, I am tired. To run a campaign for as many months as he has run, and then to be out there today greeting people, it is understandable that you would be exhausted at this time of the night. That being said, he also certainly gives off the feeling of, I didn't really fully expect to be here in a neck-and-neck race. We should emphasize, if Phil Berger goes on to win this race, which he very well has a very good chance of doing, and then goes on to win in November, the margin of victory does not affect his power in any iota. He would still, if the Republicans gain the majority and keep the majority in November, still be the Senate majority and still have the same power as he does in that sense. And yet to come so close, to be on the ropes at the end of election night, it is understandable that someone in his situation would be exhausted. And that was what was conveyed here. And he said it, I feel tired.
Does that, the fact that it was so close, have any implications in November?
This district is still a Republican-leaning district, and it is largely understood, highly understood, that whoever wins the Republican primary in this race will go on to victory in the general election. It is not a certainty, but it is highly likely that which of these two men emerges from the primary will be the senator from this district in that way. So it doesn't have any effect there, but it's just so clear that when you are the Senate Majority Leader, and you have the financial advantage, when you have President Trump's endorsement, and then to be on the ropes here in that sense, it's a dramatic evening in that sense.
Quite the contrast, John. We appreciate it. We want to move on to a different race now. United States Senate. If you like drama and close races, these were not the races for you. Roy Cooper, former two-term Democratic governor, cruising to victory, receiving 92% of the overall vote. He was facing a handful of Democratic challengers. He thanked his challengers and also criticized his opponent, who we learned at about the same time that the Cooper news came out would be Michael Whatley, who was endorsed by President Trump. He also had an excellent showing today, receiving roughly 2/3 of all the ballots cast in this Republican primary. And Michael Whatley, of course, the former Republican National Committee chair. So it'll be Roy Cooper, Michael Whatley for Thom Tillis's Senate seat this November.
And let's continue our coverage now with Joshua Davis, who has been covering the Cooper camp for us. How's it going out there tonight, Joshua? Key takeaways.
Kenny, Christine, good evening. Now, as you can tell behind me, the party has wrapped up some time ago. I want to say about an hour, maybe 2 hours ago, but there was a lot, and I mean a lot of energy here tonight. It's safe to say that North Carolina Democrats are in high spirits as this Cooper campaign now shifts its focus to November. Key to note, affordability was at the heart of Cooper's remarks tonight. He attacked Republicans in Washington, and he attacked his now official opponent, former RNC chair Michael Whatley. Cooper called Whatley a, quote, D.C. insider and blasted Whatley's approach to issues like health care. And during his remarks, Cooper also drew on his history as Attorney General, as governor, and his upbringing in Nash County as reasons why he can relate to North Carolinians and why voters should send him to Washington. And keep in mind, the last time a Democrat held a Senate seat was when Kay Hagan won and was elected in 2008. And the Democratic Party, I saw tonight, is confident that Senate seat will once again flip blue.
We have a long and difficult road ahead. But even during these tough times, those of you who know me know this is true, I am filled with hope. We have a real opportunity here to return our government in Washington to the people where it belongs. Together, with the help of everybody here and those watching at home, we will lower costs for working families and win this seat in the United States Senate.
And again, now it is a race to November as the Cooper campaign pours all of its time and resources into elevating Cooper against his opponent, Michael Whatley. In Raleigh, I'm Joshua Davis for WXII 12 News.
All right, Joshua, thank you. Team coverage continues now with Bethany Cates.
Bethany has been with Team Whatley this evening in Charlotte. Bethany, this is a race that was called about 3 hours ago. I don't imagine there's a whole lot happening where you are either.
That's exactly right. You can almost imagine it being crickets out here. But let me tell you, a few hours ago inside, it was bumper to bumper with a lot of Michael Whatley's supporters showing up, and you can almost say it's like they came, they saw, they conquered, and they heard the results that they were looking for this evening. Now, it's important to note, as soon as Whatley took the stage, he thanked the Trump administration for their hard work on the United States, as well as the endorsement for him as Republican candidate for this U.S. Senate. And I think it's important to touch on a few of the tidbits that he talked about, which was securing the border, strengthening the economy, and he also says that this election is bigger than a primary race. He also added that he's looking to fight for more jobs, bigger checks, and to make North Carolina a safe place. And that's just something that his supporters said they are also looking to him as he continues to run this race for the next 8 months. And listen to what he had to say about that.
I will work every day to earn the trust of every North Carolinian who wants safer streets, affordable living, and a stronger future. Tonight is not the end of a campaign. Tonight is the beginning of a movement to restore common sense leadership. A movement to stand with working families instead of criminals. A movement to make North Carolina safer, stronger, and more affordable. Our state's best days are still ahead, and together, we're going to win in November.
And I think it's important to note the significance of this watch party taking place tonight in Charlotte, as in the past, Charlotte has been a densely populated Democratic voter area. And also, it's important to note that Mecklenburg County has the most Democratic voters by far of any of North Carolina's 100 counties. And some of his reporters also shared with me that it's going to take more than just the Trump endorsement to win that election in November. But we'll continue to keep you updated as more details unfold with this race. For now, I'm live in Charlotte. Bethany Cates, WXII 12 News, sending it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Bethany.
Let's turn our attention now to Winston-Salem County Schools. You know, we talk about Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, Kelly, and we've talked so much about the budget issues. We've talked about declining enrollment and these school board seats that are up for grabs, all 9 of them, dozens of candidates vying for them. Tell us more.
There are 37 candidates in this race, but that pool has now been narrowed down. Now, there are 3 candidates who are guaranteed to move on. So those folks, they're not up tonight. They're not waiting on these results. But 13 folks are learning that they are likely headed to the November election. Again, these are unofficial results. We are still waiting for provisional ballots to come in, still waiting for that canvass period. That's really important in a school board race with so many people in it, because just a few votes can really make a big difference. You're getting your first look here at the at-large Democratic race. You're seeing the front runners there: Rhonda Mays, Valerie Brockenbrough, and Elizabeth Mottsinger. Now, these are all folks. Rhonda Mays and Valerie Brockenbrough are both frequently at school board meetings. They are very, very involved in this community. And Elizabeth Mottsinger, she is a former school board member, so strong name ID among voters there. Now, turning to the District 1 Democratic race, this is really interesting. The 2 folks who came out on top, and there are 2 seats on the school board, are 2 incumbents. You have Travonia Brown Gaither and Alex Bohannon, who is the vice chair. There's been a lot of discussion about these incumbent candidates, because in this race, when you've come out of a district where there's been a $45 million budget crisis and you were at the helm, name ID in this race, it could help you, it could hurt you. But for Alex Bohannon and Travonia Brown Gaither, it seemed to help. And that was also the case in the District 2 Republican race, just eking in there. And the 4th spot, there are 4 seats in District 2. Robert Barr, he is the other incumbent candidate who made it into these results. There were 6 incumbent candidates running, and half of them seem to be in position to move on to the November general election.
So the board could be, depending on how it shakes out, 2/3 new, because there were 3 incumbents who did not even bother seeking re-election, correct?
That is right. You had 2 at-large seats and then 1 District 2 member. They've chosen not to seek re-election this time. So at least 3 seats are guaranteed to get new members. Now, but it's looking like here that 3 incumbent candidates could be moving on. But again, this is still a packed race. Now, we talk about a district, or a race rather, with 37 candidates. Whittling that down to 16 candidates still leaves voters with a lot of choices here. And that's really going to be the case. I mean, looking at all these names. Now, another interesting thing here that I want to note, there were more than 49,000 people who cast a ballot in this race. Now, when I talked to voters, there were really 2 things on their mind: the U.S. Senate race, which we, of course, have noted this is very, very high profile. But the other thing was they were going straight to the bottom of the ticket and talking about this school board race. And I think it's really key to highlight why. This is a school district of more than 49,000 students. It is the 4th largest public school district in the entire state of North Carolina. And when you have a budget of this year, at least, of more than $707 million, and you're coming out of a crisis of more than $45 million, this is on a lot of folks' minds. Folks want to send their children to good schools, strong schools, and this doesn't just affect parents and families, this affects businesses too, because that draws folks in when you see that there's a strong public school system. So a lot was riding on this race, and again, you're just seeing that in these results, that there are just a lot of interest, a lot of folks turning out in this race.
Were a lot of candidates capitalizing on that, the fact that a financial background could be an asset here?
Absolutely. One thing I heard repeatedly in these interviews was, I come from an audit compliance background. I come from a corporate management background. And you were seeing some of these candidates. I want to turn to the District 2 Republican race, because you were seeing the front runner there with 15% of the vote. I mean, a really large gap in this race to the second runner-up, right? Robert Weiss, he talked extensively about his corporate background, his experience on Wall Street even, and he's coming out on top in that District 2 Republican race. District 2 is everywhere in Forsyth County. That's really not the center of the city of Winston-Salem. So these candidates on the Republican and Democratic ticket, both of which I note are very, very packed, were having to make appeals to voters from Clemens to Rural Hall to Kernersville. So they really had to make a broad appeal there. So you're seeing, again, a lot of those folks with both educational and that corporate finance background.
Kelly, obviously a different race than Paige Berger, but we're looking at some of these, and I'm looking at the percentage and the number of votes that separate second, third, fourth, fifth place in a pick 2 or a pick 3 race. A lot of these still to be determined. You could be in fifth place, and after they count the provisionals and absentees and do a canvass, a few dozen votes could propel you from fifth to third for a lot of these, couldn't it? That's absolutely right, and I think it's really interesting the timing of this. We have a school board meeting coming up this Thursday evening. Wow. So this was rescheduled. That there were some reasons that this was rescheduled from last week to this week. So some of these members are going to be coming off potentially losses or wins, or learning in the moment that they have just shot up or shot down in these races. So, I mean, it's really, really going to be interesting to see how those last few ballots that are coming in affect these races. Because as you said, I mean, some of them are just separated by dozens of votes.
Kelly, leading up to this election, you spoke to just about every single candidate, all but one who couldn't make it because of the snowstorm that weekend that we had those conditions. What's the key takeaway from all this for you in talking to all these people? I mean, you've heightened the importance of all of this for obvious reasons, but what are some of the key takeaways that you can tell us about tonight?
Well, I think one thing I noticed was I was hearing similar messages from a lot of these candidates, whether it comes to restoring the district's finances, restoring the community's trust, making schools safer. So it's really, really difficult to distinguish yourself in this race. I think that is one key takeaway. And I mean, I think another key takeaway is, what are voters looking for? I mean, we're looking at these results and you're seeing that some of these incumbent candidates do have a shot at going to the November general election. Some folks might be thinking to themselves, some voters, well, maybe I want someone with institutional knowledge or background. That was certainly a part of these incumbent candidates' pitches to voters, while some of these newcomer candidates, a lot of them said, well, look what happened while these folks were in charge. We need to replace the entire board. So you're really seeing a mix of thought there.
So just to tie a bow around this, 9 seats, all 9 seats up, 3 incumbents we knew entering tonight were not seeking re-election. So we're guaranteed to have 3 new board members. It looks like right now 2 incumbents are safely on to November, possibly a third as well, but lots of votes still to be counted. Is that correct?
That is correct. Again, we are going to be whittling this down from a pool of 37 candidates to 16. Still a lot for voters to digest after tonight, no doubt about that, but that is where things stand tonight. We're going to be breaking down these results as we continue, but this is what it is shaping up to be. And I think it's also interesting to note that, you know, when we first saw these first few ballots coming in, these votes really haven't shifted all that much throughout the evening. There was not major switching back and forth between these candidates. Of course, that could become the case as we get these provisional ballots in, but this has been pretty cemented throughout the night. And I mean, given that these are unofficial results.
Kelly, we appreciate your hard work and making this digestible for everyone, because you've done such a great job breaking down some key components, things that are quite complicated, and making it easily understandable. So we really appreciate you.
Thank you, Christine. It's a pleasure to be with both of you tonight.
Yeah, a little peek behind the curtain here. Kelly is our go-to for all things school. Anybody has a question about anything related? Okay, we'll call Kelly. Find Kelly. Is she here? Is she off? Is it her weekend? Text her. She'll know the answer, and probably pretty quickly too. Kelly, thank you very much.
And I hope to be able to continue to answer those questions for folks.
You bet. All right, I think that is going to wrap things up here. It is 11:38 on a Tuesday night, an eventful Tuesday night. We're going to show you a few more results here as we step aside, and eventually we will be joining the Tonight Show in Progress with Jimmy Fallon. But wow, what a primary night it was. And a lot of these down ballot races, if you were looking for one specific thing, congressional, a lot of contested sheriff's races as well, and most Piedmont Triad counties, frankly. All of these are available right now on our website, WXII12.com.
And if you've ever wondered if every vote counts, I think tonight decisively answered that question. Good night, everyone.